When students come into our classroom, we know that they're not just bringing in a backpack, pencils, and a notebook. They're also bringing in less tangible items, like deep-seated cultures and beliefs that they have grown up with, some positive and some negative. The right book in the hands of the right child may serve to help our new generation see people as just that, people. That includes people with disabilities, of a different color, of a different socioeconomic background, religious background. The list goes on. These books, known as multicultural books, could help our students combat ignorance and stereotyping, teach understanding and tolerance, and help them grow into the global citizens we'd like them to become. Multicultural books are any book that offers a positive, authentic interaction with a cultural group, with that culture being everything from an African American community to a visually impaired community to traipsing through the hills of a small Malawian fishing village. Today, however, we'd like to focus on several books dedicated to the Latino experience, and then look at books geared towards the African American experience during the days of slavery, and also go over some multicultural activities that could easily be incorporated into several subject areas. For each book, we will go over how to incorporate the book into your lessons, the standards it covers, and why we chose the book in the first place. First, let's look at the Latino experience through literature. For younger students, think kindergarten and first grade, we'll start with Samantha Vamos's book, The Cazuela That the Farm Maiden Stirred. This book gives each word that is going into the cazuela, or cooking pot, in Spanish and then English, and also helps young students work on sequencing of events as the main character and her helpers slowly add more and more ingredients, in the correct order of course, to the cazuela. For young readers, this is a great way to not only teach them sequencing, but it presents a positive Latino protagonist, and also provides students with a Spanish dictionary and recipe for arroz con leche, or rice pudding in the back, giving them a positive taste, so to speak, of Latino culture. Standards covered include, but aren't limited to, reflecting on systematic processes and assessing for completeness of investigation, asking and answering questions about unknown words in a text, and describing the connection between a series of historical events, scientific ideas or concepts, or steps and technical procedures in a text. Now, let's head to a book called Adelita, A Mexican Cinderella Story by Tomie dePaulo. This book takes the classic Cinderella folktale, something many students will have already heard, and places it in Mexico. Spanish phrases, cultural traditions, and settings are all shown. Both positive and negative characters are seen, reminding children that people, whatever ethnicity and culture, have good and bad sides, and just like any culture, are round characters that can change and grow. No stereotypes here. Because many of the students will already know the story, the retelling will allow them to focus on the cultural events, as well as the literary ones. Standards covered include recounting stories including fables and folk tales from diverse cultures and determining their central message, lesson, or moral, and describing how characters in a story respond to major events and challenges. To combine social studies and English class, it could be interesting for students to look at African American culture during the time of slavery. Let's examine two books that will help students get a better grasp on what it was like as an African American during this time. First, Philip Reed Saves the Statue of Freedom by Walton and Lapham is the true story of plantation slave Philip Reed, who was recruited by tradesmen and finally the U.S. government to leave his plantation life and work on crafting and maintaining a sculpture known as the Freedom Sculpture. Yet even though his work was invaluable, Reed was still a slave, still owned, and was only paid on his day off, Sunday, and then just a dime. This book could be used with 4th through 8th grade students. It shows how African Americans accomplished very important tasks, but they were still slaves. Many slaves participated in building Washington, D.C. One could use this book when talking about slavery and the Emancipation Proclamation. In the epilogue, the Emancipation Proclamation is discussed, along with a short biography of Reed. Finally, let's look at Sugar by Jewel Parker Rhodes. This book is told from the first-person perspective of 10-year-old Sugar, who lives and works on a sugarcane plantation shortly after emancipation. Even though slavery has ended, Sugar and her foster family still live in slave shacks, and they now get paid a small wage for their work. Sugar makes friends early in the book with the plantation owner's son, Billy. At first, Billy is racist, but then as he gets to know Sugar, his attitude changes. Also, Chinese workers come to help on the plantation, and even though there is conflict at first with different races, they all overcome their stereotypes and find a way to live together. Spanning social studies and English language arts standards, and also showing children that if they have negative feelings about another race, they too can change, are several reasons Sugar is a standout multicultural read. It is also a Jane Addams Children's Book Award winner, a 2013 Junior Library Guild selection, and won a 2013 Audie, an award for Best Audiobook. Standards covered by these two books include, but aren't limited to, students interacting effectively and working cooperatively with the many ethnic and cultural groups of our nation and world, students understanding, analyzing, and interpreting historical events, conditions, trends, and issues to develop historical perspective, students describing cultural elements, students determining central ideas or themes of a text, students considering diverse and global perspectives when drawing conclusions, and finally, responding to literature and creative expressions of ideas in various formats and genres. But why stop with these standards in these books? There's so many activities to immerse and engage your students in different cultures. Try out some of the following. You could hire a professional storyteller to come to your classroom or library. You could bring in someone from a different culture and have students practice their interviewing skills. They'll gain cultural knowledge and also begin to learn the proper way to ask meaningful questions. You could host a multicultural food fair in your classroom. You could create a picture book that represents the culture your class is currently studying. Or let's go on a journey. Students could make pamphlets or brochures that represent different countries they're studying. Sidewalk poetry. Students could create haiku, free verse, or any type of poem to demonstrate knowledge of other cultures. Let them take to the streets and write their poems in sidewalk chalk around the school. Students could also write Who I Am or bio poems, which reflect their individuality and celebrate their differences. More advanced students could add mandalas to this assignment. The list of multicultural activities is endless, and to get a copy of the activities above, as well as additional activities, please get our handout after the presentation from one of the volunteers. We also have included a multicultural literature resource page for your own classroom use. Educational reformer John Dewey wrote, "Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself." As we work with young children, the importance of sharing and teaching multicultural literature is not just about what goes on inside our classroom, but what goes on when our students leave our doors and go out into the world with a larger, wiser, more accepting, global perspective.